One of the earliest deck techs we covered on the channel was of my Rafiq of the Many commander deck. This was a deck that I put together entirely on my own back around 2013 after having played with the Evasive Maneuvers precon deck for a bit. This was long before the era of EDH rec and the abundance of online commander resources that we enjoy today, and so a lot of the cards in my original list were just stumbled upon through hours of testing and modifying and data collecting. This was my baby, and to this day it's still one of my favorites. The deck was a Voltron style deck, looking to equip a single creature with several powerful equipments and then swinging in, hopefully, for lethal. The majority of the creatures in this deck were chosen to be dangerous Haymaker cards, each being a threat on its own, let alone combined with the value that Rafiq afforded them in giving them power and toughness boosts and double strike. A lot has changed since 2013, with Voltron decks like this largely falling off the radar for most players. Legendary creatures nowadays are designed deliberately with the concept of being relevant and useful in Commander in mind, and as a result, many offer more value engine based designs than something combat centric like this. Rafiq, a card originally from 2008, long before the Commander era began, was a card that the EDH community stumbled upon, finding out that he was incidentally powerful as a general. At the time, the format had no staple made for Commander cards, and every deck was comprised largely of cards that people had simply laying around their collection. Interaction and single target removal had not yet become the major facet of Commander as it is now, and as a result, Voltron style decks looking to invest heavily into a single creature could hold their own against other decks. Because of the shift of the Commander format that we've seen over the last decade, a lot of these Voltron style decks have just fallen off being mainstays at all but the lowest of power levels. Targeted removal has become a lot more of a priority in deck building at mid to upper levels of Commander, and so it's easy to see why a deck like this might have some difficulty in today's format. We do have a few rare instances of commanders who do look to go down this route with some success, but by and far, the game looks to have more card advantage and combo potential tacked onto their commander options. But also because of the sentimental value of my Rafiq deck, I wanted to attempt to prove that notion wrong, and so in this video I want to share with you a deck that I think can still hold its own against today's modern Commander format. Rafiq of the Many also got a reprint in the recent Commander Masters set, and so I think a few players potentially finding out about him for the first time might warrant me looking at this classic Commander legend and revisit a favorite deck of mine. Rafiq of the Many is a 3/3 human knight for 4 mana, broken down into 1 generic and then 1 each of green, white, and blue. He is Exalted, which triggers whenever a creature you control attacks alone, giving it +1/+1 until the end of turn. Rafiq also has another triggered ability. Whenever a creature attacks alone, you can give it double strike until the end of turn. This is a pretty potent pair of attack triggers. On Rafiq alone, he would become a 4/4 with double strike. That threatens a defending player with 8 commander damage at the minimum. This also brings up the debate of whether or not commander damage is still relevant in today's format. 21 points of commander damage might seem a daunting task to some of today's commander choices, but for Rafiq, this is a lot easier to accomplish. In fact, one of my favorite win conditions in Rafiq would be combining him with an enchantment called Finest Hour for a one-shot victory. Finest Hour is 5 mana for an enchantment that has Exalted. Whenever a creature attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of this turn, you untap that creature, and then after this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. Utilizing Rafiq, the 2 Exalted triggers between Rafiq and the Finest Hour would give Rafiq +2/+2, making him a 5/5 with double strike. After that first attack goes through, which would deal potentially 10 commander damage, he would then untap, and then we could attack with him again. The 2 Exalted triggers would go off again, and because Exalted lasts until the end of turn, this would then make him a 7/7 with double strike, able to deal 14 damage. So for Rafiq to swing without being blocked, this would one-shot an opponent he was attacking. This made him a tremendous threat at the table, and with the many methods we use in the deck to make him either unblockable or difficult to block, it would require players to respond and try to remove him. Another big aspect of this deck is, at the time, my playstyle was very conservative with attacking. I liked to leave as many of my creatures up and ready to block oncoming attacks, and so to that end, I looked at some control cards such as Crawl Space, Dueling Grounds, and Stoic Angel to hinder my opponent's ability to be aggressive back at me. And as for the Haymakers, I liked to go with a lot of low mana value creatures that had a powerful enough of an impact that them being the sole attacker most of the time would still be enough to be worth it. We have cards like Augury Adept, who had sort of a reverse Dark Confidant effect. where whenever the Kithkin would deal damage to a player, I would reveal the top card of the library, gain life equal to that card's mana value, and then add it to my hand. Given that Rafiq gives double strike, this would basically draw me 2 cards and then gain me some life. Cephalid Constable seems innocuous, being a 1/1, but when it's suited up and powered up, this card could actually wipe out opponents' boards entirely. See, its ability lets me bounce a number of target permanents controlled by the opponent that the Constable deals combat damage to, equal to the amount of damage dealt. So say we have this out with Rafiq. Rafiq would make the Constable a 2/2 with double strike. If both strikes connect, this would deal a total of 4 damage, letting us bounce up to 4 permanents they control. And since this does not state non-land permanents only, the defending players' lands are fair targets. Cold Eye Selkie is another creature that offers us card draw when it deals combat damage. This one has Island Walk, so if a blue player is at the table and has an island in play, they are the ideal player to swing at with our Selkie for some free card draw. When the Cold Eyed Selkie connects, it draws us card equal to the amount of damage that we deal. Geist of St. Trapped is an oldie but a goodie, being a former powerhouse Voltron commander in his own right. He has hexproof, making him tricky to remove, and then whenever he attacks, you create a 4/4 Flying Angel token that is also tapped and attacking. That token gets exiled at the end of combat. Interestingly enough, the Geist of St. Trapped will still trigger our Exalted cards, even though it creates the attacking Angel token. The Geist's ability will use the stack along with the Exalted triggers, and since Exalted only looks to see one creature being declared the attacker, the ability will still go off. Sarah Ascendant is another fun early game drop. Being effectively a 1-mana 6/6 with both flying and lifelink is perhaps the best value you could possibly get on a card. Some newcomers in recent years have also brought a lot to the table for this deck. Danitha, Nubenalia's Light, has some great keyword soup to begin with. Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, all being very powerful abilities in a Voltron deck. But then allowing me to cast an aura or equipment from the graveyard each turn is just the right kind of recursion this deck needed. One of the ways that this deck folds to removal is simply getting rid of our equipment. It's a lot advantageous for us for when our equipped spells are finding their way to the graveyard, and so having a way to get them back after being destroyed is pure value. Galia, Kindler of Hope, could easily have been the commander for this deck, but because Rafiq is my baby and very personal to me, I will simply add Galia to the 99 and we will all be happy about it. This creature lets us play our aura and equipment spells from the top of our library, and then immediately attach them to a creature we control. One of the best sources of extra value in this deck is cheating equip costs. We'll get to the specific equipment that we're going to be using much later on, but having the ability to bypass the equip activation saves us a tremendous amount of mana that we can use to play more spells. Trigon Predator I know has existed for a hot minute, but this one came across my radar quite recently. This creature has flying, which is already a relevant evasion ability, but when it deals combat damage to a player, we can destroy a target artifact or enchantment that player controls. This falls into the same sort of category as the Cephalid Constable, acting as a bit of aggressive removal that we can take advantage of given the sheer power some of these creatures will be swinging in with. But now that we've talked about our creature threats, I want to talk about this Exalted sub-theme. We will almost always be attacking with only one creature, and so the Exalted trigger will give +1/+1 to that attacking creature. We do also have a few other triggers in the deck that will help make that buff more powerful. Guildspire Avenger has an Exalted trigger, and then even more, it can be great to hold back for defense, letting us tap it to destroy a target creature that has dealt damage to us this turn. This is my go-to for dealing with clapback damage. Noble Hierarch is one of the few mana dorks in the deck, but she also comes with the benefit of having an Exalted trigger on her, making it an excellent first turn play. Kasali Pride Mage has Exalted, and then in addition we can pay 1 and sacrifice the Pride Mage to destroy target artifact or enchantment, making this a pretty relevant hate bear. Sublime Archangel is perhaps the best Exalted card in the deck, giving all of our other creatures an instance of Exalted. Now, in the event of a creature being on the battlefield that already has an instance of Exalted prior to the Archangel putting play, this simply adds another instance, each of which will trigger separately. Dropping the Sublime Archangel generally predates a lethal swing, as all of our creatures will be helping pump up that single creature attacking. We also have Sigil of Valor, which, while not technically a card with Exalted, it basically does the same thing, giving the equipped creature attacking alone +1/+1 for each other creature we control. Angelic Exaltation has about the same effect, but it's on an enchantment. These two are very passive cards that can help us power out some extra damage to help close out a game. Finally, Cathedral of War is a colorless land that has an Exalted trigger on it. So having several of these at our disposal can help make even the smallest creature into a threat. One of my favorite aspects about this deck is because we have several creatures that have additional abilities tacked onto them based on combat, like the Trigon Predator and the Cephalic Constable, we have almost a toolbox-like quality for our deck. We are always capable of getting an ability that we need at any given point. We need card draw, we have our Augury Adept. We need removal, we've got the Constable. But perhaps one of the most important parts of this deck is our ability to make creatures unblockable. Our creatures' abilities serve best when it's unimpeded by opponents' creatures. Both Mother and Giver of Runes can give our creatures blanket protection from the colors on our opponent's board, making them theoretically unblockable by that player this turn. Thassa, God of the Sea, lets us pay 1 and a blue to make a target creature we control unblockable this turn. Rogue's Passage is a mainstay in decks needing to push damage through, giving our creature full unblockable. Now, we are a Voltron deck, and so we do need our equipment to help give our creatures the power to one-shot our opponents. We have Colossus Hammer, which is one of my favorite cards to cheat the equip cost with, since giving a creature +10/+10 on a 1-drop is going to make it a tremendous threat. Grafted Exoskeleton gives us the potential for an infect win, and since we can easily pull out 10 or more damage unblockable, this really will put the pressure on the table to play more defensively. The classic pairing of Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots both give a form of protection and haste. Skullclamp is here, not really in here to give us any card draw crazy engines, but this can give us a small power boost to a creature while giving it the underlying threat that if it's removed, we draw 2 cards. We run 2 of the Swords cards, both Swords of Feast and Famine and Sword of War and Peace. These 2 give me a good spread of color protection, and I think that of the swords, these give me the best triggers effects of the cycle that I want in my deck. Umezawa's Jitte is another oldie but a goodie. It's important to note that with Rafiq giving attacking creature double strike, this card's ability will trigger twice, giving it a total of 4 charge counters. These counters can be used in a myriad of ways, giving my creature a temporary buff, acting as a removal piece for my opponent's creatures, or, in a pinch, giving me a shock of life gain. Prowler's Helm was the card that my wife used to beat me in our first game of Commander, as it gives the creature equipped unblockability by all creatures except walls. We have 2 Commander decks in all the Magic that reliably run enough walls for this to be relevant, so 99.9% of the time our creature is just unblockable. Lastly, Trailblazer Boot, giving non-basic land walk, is tremendously undervalued in Commander, as against anything but a monocolored deck, we have a good likelihood of being, again, unblockable. A fun little piece of tech that we've gotten in recent years is Sigarda's Aid, a 1-drop enchantment that gives our equipped spells flash. Upon those equipment cards entering the battlefield, they can automatically attach for free to a creature we control. This is so much value, as it means that we only need to worry about paying for the casting cost of our equipments, and their having flash lets me hold them up as a response till the perfect time to drop them. This can be especially lethal in the case of the Grafted Exoskeleton or the Colossus Hammer, letting our opponents choose, we're not going to block the creature that's attacking us, and then you flash in the 1-mana Colossus Hammer to give a huge power boost, or, in the case of the Exoskeleton, that innocuous 10 damage that you're letting go through suddenly becomes 10 lethal infect damage. Now, this is largely the core of the deck, though you do have a number of slots that you can utilize how you wish. I chose to go about it the rude way with a bit more control, since I am very light on general removal and interaction in the deck. Cards like Aven Mind Sensor, Drannith Magistrate, Esper Sentinel, and then the Grand Abolisher all give some sort of effect to help slow down opponents' game plans. I think the thing I truly enjoy the most about Rafiq is that even after all of these years, it's still really fun to pilot, to play, to goldfish. Just having a great amount of flexibility in what kind of threats I can bring out each game is just right up my alleyway. This is one of the few Commander decks that I feel super comfortable in running, perhaps from having years of experience playing it. It's also interesting to me to note that there are a lot of cards in this deck that I simply had in my collection as I was stumbling into Commander. About a few years before this deck was ever conceived, a friend of mine was actually leaving the game and wanted to give me his whole collection in a shoebox. A lot of cards in that box actually turned out to be all-stars in Commander. I have a Revised Soul Ring that's in this deck, the Umezawa's Jitte, and then Sensei's Divining Top. I think what really brings me back to this deck was just the sheer level of sentiment to this deck, and the time, the effort, and then the care that went into building it. Anyway, enough schmaltzy stuff. I hope you enjoyed this walk down memory lane with me. If you'd like to see the full deck list, I'll include a link to the Mox field in the description. Because of the time I put into building this deck and all the neuroticism with building specific cards into it, I've also ensured that the deck list in Moxfield is exactly as I run it. This includes any specific printings of certain cards, such as the revised Soul Ring. There's an old school Swords of Plowshares in there, for the people who care. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, a like and a share are always more than appreciated. If you're new here, feel free to hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all the goings-ons around here. And as always, I'll catch you all next video.